In the next two lessons, we're looking at verb tenses for the present. And we're going to concentrate on the present simple and the present continuous. Now, each lesson will be divided into three parts. Part one will be example situations. Part two, verb conjugations, so positive, question and negative forms. And part three will be the practice exercises. So let's get started with present simple. And examples of present simple are I go, we play, and he eats. Part 1, situations used. And there are two types of situations I want to tell you about. Firstly, we use present simple for talking generally. Two examples here. Number one is I live in Chicago. We could also say I am from Chicago, which is also present simple. The second example is water boils at 100 degrees. So, present simple for talking generally. Now, the second way we use present simple is for habit. And again, two examples. First one is I play tennis every Saturday. And the second one is we often go on holiday to Spain. Now, do notice that both sentences have time expressions. In the first, it's every Saturday, and in the second, it's often. Now, time expressions are really important when learning tenses because they make it easier to remember when to use what tense. For present simple, I've prepared a list of 7 of the most useful ones. Now, these are all time expressions of habit, and we'll start with always at the top. Second, we have every day, every week, every year, which we've seen. Next one is usually. Next one we've seen is often. Going down is sometimes. Even less common is rarely. And finally, we have never. As you might have noticed, this list goes in order of frequency. So the most frequent is at the top here, always, and the least frequent is never at the bottom here. So that's part 1. And so far we've seen that we use present simple for talking generally. Example, I live in Chicago. And for habit. So I play tennis every Saturday. And we've also seen the time expressions like every Saturday. Let's now turn to the verb conjugations. And we're going to look at 2 example verbs here. To live, which is regular, and to be, which is irregular. And in each of these example verbs, we're going to look at the positive, the question, and negative forms. So, to live, positive form, I, you, we, they live, and he, she, it lives. Now, don't forget the S here on lives. It's very common that students forget the S in the third person. And if you do forget this S, it sounds bad. So remember. Next, we have the question form. And we have do I, you, we, or they live? And does he, she, or it live? That's question form. And now the negative form, I, you, we, or they do not live, and he, she, it does not live. In the informal, for the first we could say I don't live, and for the second we would say he, she, it doesn't live. So that's to live. Let's now look at to be. In the positive form again, I am. Secondly, you, we, or they are, and he, she, or it is. And in the informal, we would say I'm. Here we would say you're, or we're, or they're. And here we would say he's, or she's, or it's. So that's the positive form. Let's now go to the question form for to be. Am I? Are you, we, or they? And is he, she, or it. That's question form. And finally, the negative form. And here we have I am not, you, we, they are not, and he, she, it is not. Turning again to the informal, here we would say I'm not. Here we would say you're not, or we're not, or they're not. We could also say you aren't, or we aren't, or they aren't. And finally, he's not, or she's not, or it's not. And again, we could also say he isn't, or she isn't, or it isn't. So that's the end of part 2. Here is the PDF, which you can download. And as you can see, it has the time expressions. It also has the verb conjugations of to live and to be. And it has at the bottom some example sentences to remind you of the first part of this lesson. Join me in part 3 for the practice exercises. And in the next lesson, we'll be looking at present continuous.